Hello and welcome back to another one of Forward Camera's camera tutorials. Today we're going to talk about how to use the Minolta SR-7. Now, this is an amazing, extremely well built, in my opinion, SLR from the 1960s. Minolta's SLRs from the 60s are really nicely made. And we're going to talk about this camera and how to use it. Okay, let's get started. So, it's a 35mm camera. It takes black and white or color 35mm film. And how do we load the camera? Well, we flip the camera to the back. We pull up this tab here, which is where the film is going to go, and it unlocks the back. Now, we're going to put our 35mm film cartridge in here, lock it in place by pushing this down into the cartridge, see? And make sure it aligns properly. You pull the film around the back and make sure it hits the sprockets over here. So make sure you hit these areas properly so that it goes in the holes. And then you feed the end of the film, right? It's a little hard to see. You feed the end of the film into this little metal groove here, which is a little difficult for those of us who use SLRs. It's not exactly what we're used to, but we put it in there. Okay, you see this? I'm gonna get a little closer. See this little black area here? You feed it in there and you crank it. Okay, crank it once or twice and it will pull the film nice and flush. Okay, when it's pulled, you close it and it locks. You hear that click? It means it locks. You're ready to go. So what you need to do, you need to press the shutter button's over here. Okay, it has an S right now. That means start. Okay, and you're gonna crank it until you hit 1. So now it's in between S and 1, and then we're at 1. We don't press anything yet because that will be our first picture. All right, now to change, this is how we advance the film, by the way. This is where we advance the film. This is where we take the picture. Okay, that's the button to take the picture. Now we change our shutter speed over here. Okay, 1/1000th of a second is its fastest, and it goes all the way to 1 second, and then bulb, which means that you could hold the shutter down for as long as you want by pressing the button. And by the way, a cable release can be put in there, so you can do long exposures or set it up on a tripod and then kind of like press down the button. That's, you know, all up to you. So these are where you set your shutter. And also over here, it goes to X. That would be for if you're using a flash attachment. Now there's no top external piece to put your flash on here. Those would be like extra sort of parts that you would need to get, right, that attaches over here. You would have to unscrew this part of the lens, and there's a whole thing that attaches to the top, and usually get those separate. So anyway, these are the shutters. To set your film speed, so right now I'm at 400. That's what I use usually for my black and white film, but you could change your ASA or ISO, right, film speed based on what it says on your film. So you would pull up this tab here and you just kind of rotate, see how the film speed in that little box changes, 200, whatever. So I'm gonna leave it at 400 because that's what I use. And now you need a button, I like to call it the button cell battery, which is I think a PX625 battery. They look like little buttons and they're easy to get online. You would unscrew this, put your battery in, and to turn the camera, right now the light meter is off, but you don't want to drain it, so you keep it off most of the time. And then you turn it on, you rotate it to on. So I'm gonna move it with my finger, and the little red arrow goes to on. And you don't want to put your finger over here, by the way, because that's where it's going to get its light reading. That's how it's going to read its light. It's not through the lens, right? This is an earlier SLR from the 60s, so they're usually like built into the side, okay, if it has a light meter. So don't just be like, oh, ooh, I'm going to put my finger here. No, let that read the light. Now, where do you get your reading for the light meter on this camera? Not through the lens. It's actually on the top of the camera over here. So there's a little arrow, right? So number one, it depends if you're inside or outside. I don't remember which one it is, like if you press inside or outside, but I think what's gonna happen is you can see it, there's a little kind of arrow that will go up and down and will tell you what aperture to set based on, like, let's just say I set this to 1/500th of a second. This little arrow will say, oh, go to 1.4 or whatever. And as you notice, by the way, so let's take a look. Oops. You'll notice by the you'll notice, by the way, that when I move my shutter speed, there's a little piece of paper that moves along with it, and it's pretty primitive. And actually, if you open up the camera, you'll see there's like a cable that moves this back and forth. So it's kind of interesting how that works back from the 60s, but for these like really old light meters. But you'll notice that the apertures are switching, see? And then it will align with the light meter wherever the light reading will come. So let's just say you do 1/8 of a second and this little orange thing says 5.6, then you say, okay, I'm gonna switch my aperture on my aperture ring to 5.6 for the proper exposure, okay? So it's a little bit of a fiddling around, you know, with the earlier SLRs. And if you don't get a reading here, you have to press the button until you get a reading. So I think indoors you press the button, outdoors you don't, but I can't remember exactly for that until you get things aligned properly, okay? Now, how do I take a photo? Well, you did everything, you wound the camera, you just press the shutter button. Boom, you heard it. The mirror flaps up. What you see inside here is exactly what you're going to get a photo of because it's an SLR, single lens reflex. A couple other things. So let's just say you want to put this on a tripod and take a photo of a bunch of friends in a group. Well, how do you do that? So there's a timer. You cock the timer by moving this down. You make sure you advance the film by moving this reel forward until it's done, okay? You put it on a tripod, then you press this in. See this here? You press this in. Oh, hold on. Actually, you don't press that in. You just press the shutter. Oh. Oh, you press it in. Make sure I do it. Sorry about that. Make sure that's done. You press that in. Then it takes the photo from the tripod. You don't have to touch the camera, right? You want to take a group photo. And also, with these cameras, okay, you want to change your lens. So there's a little lock here on the top. You press down, okay, and you rotate the lens to the left, and the lens will pop off. Right, and you can see the mirror in there. I'm going to show you it flip up and down. Okay, so that means it's working. And sometimes you might want to just completely flip your mirror up or down. So you could do that by moving this tab up or down here, okay? Right, so maybe you don't want the mirror to get in the way of things. You're doing a long exposure. Sometimes you want the mirror to just kind of be in one place. And oh, and then you push this button in, okay, and then to go back, you push this button in, and then it comes back down. See, it locks in place. So I move it, oh, it locked, I push it in, move it back down, the mirror comes down for your long exposures. I think that's there because if you keep the camera for too long on a tripod, the mirror or something can get in the way and start reflecting back into the film. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's what's going on and why you flip the mirror up and down. And then you align your lens, right? The red goes to red. So I take a look and my red goes to red, see? And then I rotate right until it clicks and then my lens is back on, okay? So that's how you use this camera. It's pretty primitive, but it's also extremely well built. A couple things to be mindful of. This area here for the light meter is extremely sensitive, so be careful not to put anything in there. There's a little part that could pop out. This is paper inside, right? So we just want to be careful about that. And just other than that, these cameras are built like a tank. You want to put your cord right from your flash on the top into one of these holes, depending on what type of flash you have. And make sure that when you're doing flash photography, you set this to X, okay, for your shutter speed. And that's all there is to it to use this camera. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and it was helpful. Please subscribe to our Instagram @ForwardCameras, to our Twitter @ForwardCameras. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also check out our Etsy shop, Forward Cameras. Take care. Have a nice day.